A long time ago, in a small and peaceful village called Mombasa, there lived a humble farmer named Amani. Amani was not rich, nor was he a great warrior or a man of power. His clothes were simple, his hands rough from working the fields, and his home was nothing more than a small hut. But what made Amani special was not his wealth or strength, it was his heart. Amani had the biggest, kindest heart in the entire village. Amani was married to Nya, a woman as beautiful as a moonlit night. Nya's beauty was not just in her looks but in her spirit. Her laughter was like the melody of a bird, soft and soothing, and her smile could brighten even the darkest day. Everyone in the village loved Nya, but no one loved her more than Amani. She was his everything, his treasure, his joy, his reason for living. Amani often wondered how he could show Nya just how much she meant to him. He had given her flowers, beads, and songs, but deep in his heart, he felt none of these gifts were enough. He wanted to give her something so special that no one else could ever match it. One night, Amani and Nya sat outside their little home, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. The moon was full and bright, its light casting a silver glow over the village. Nya stared at it with wide, sparkling eyes. "The moon," she said softly, "is so beautiful. It feels like magic, floating up there in the sky. Sometimes I wish I could hold it in my hands." Amani listened to her words and looked at her face, illuminated by the moonlight. At that moment, he decided. He would do something no one had ever done before. He would bring the moon to Nya. The very next day, Amani set out on his quest. He went to the elders of the village, the wisest people in Mombasa. These were men and women who knew the secrets of the world and the heavens. "Elders," Amani said, bowing deeply, "how can I reach the moon?" The elders looked at one another, then at Amani, and laughed. "The moon," one of them said. "Amani, the moon is too far. No man can reach it. It belongs to the gods in the sky." But Amani did not give up. He thanked the elders and left. Next, he went to the blacksmith, a man whose strength was legendary. The blacksmith's hands were so powerful they could bend metal like clay. "Can you build me a ladder tall enough to reach the moon?" Amani asked. The blacksmith shook his head and laughed. "A ladder to the moon? Even if I worked for 100 years, I could never build something that tall." Still, Amani refused to give up. He left the blacksmith and went to the storyteller, an old woman who knew the tales of the land, the stars, and everything in between. "Storyteller," Amani said, "is there a way to bring the moon to earth?" The storyteller smiled, her eyes sparkling like the stars she often spoke about. "The moon listens to those with pure hearts," she said. "If your love is true and strong, perhaps the moon will hear you." That night, while the village slept, Amani walked to the river. The moon was high in the sky, its reflection shimmering on the water. Amani knelt by the riverbank and spoke softly. "Moon," he said, "I know you are far away, and I know you belong to the sky. But my wife, Nya, loves you more than anything. I want to give her a piece of your light, so she knows how much she means to me. Please, moon, help me." The night was silent. Amani waited, his heart filled with hope and doubt. Then, the moon began to glow even brighter. A soft beam of light surrounded Amani, and he heard a gentle voice. "Amani," the moon said, "your love is strong and true, but bringing my light to the earth is no simple task. If you wish to prove your love, you must complete 3 challenges. Do you accept it?" "I will do anything," Amani said without hesitation. The moon gave him 3 tasks. The first task was to climb the Mountain of Whispers, the tallest peak in the land. At its top, he would find a silver feather guarded by a great eagle. The second task was to cross the Desert of Echoes, a vast land of scorching sands where whispers could drive a man mad. Hidden somewhere in the desert was a golden stone. The third and final task was to enter the Cave of Shadows, a dark and terrifying place where Amani would face his deepest fears. Inside, he would find a glowing crystal, the final piece he needed. Amani began his journey the next morning. The Mountain of Whispers was his first challenge. The climb was steep and treacherous. Sharp rocks cut his hands and cold winds bit at his skin. It took him 2 days to reach the top. At the peak, Amani saw a giant eagle perched on a rock. Its feathers shimmered like silver, and its eyes glowed with wisdom. "Why have you come to my mountain?" the eagle asked, its voice echoing like thunder. "I need one of your feathers," Amani said. "I need it to prove my love for my wife." The eagle stared at him, its fiery eyes piercing his soul. Finally, it said, "If your love is true, take a feather. But remember, the journey ahead will be even harder." Amani bowed in gratitude, plucked a single feather, and began his descent. Next, Amani arrived at the Desert of Echoes. The sun blazed down, and the sand burned his feet. But the hardest part was the whispers. As Amani walked through the desert, the wind carried strange voices that filled his mind with doubt. "You're too weak," the voices hissed. "Turn back now, you will never succeed." Amani tried to ignore them, but the whispers grew louder. They seemed to come from everywhere, surrounding him like an invisible storm. "You're wasting your time," they said. "Nya will never know your love." But Amani kept walking. He thought of Nya's smile, her laughter, and her love. He covered his ears and pressed on. After days of wandering the endless dunes, Amani saw a faint golden glow beneath the sand. With the last of his strength, he dug into the hot sand. His hands were raw and bleeding, but he didn't stop. Finally, he pulled out the golden stone, its surface smooth and shining like the sun. Finally, Amani reached the Cave of Shadows. The entrance was dark and cold, and a heavy silence hung in the air. Inside, the cave was pitch black. As Amani stepped forward, shadows began to form around him. They weren't ordinary shadows. They moved and twisted, shaping themselves into terrifying images. They showed him his worst fears: failure, loneliness, and loss. "You are not strong enough," the shadows whispered. "Turn back now. You will never succeed." Amani's heart pounded, and for a moment, he thought about running. But then he thought of Nya. He thought of her kindness, her joy, and her love. "No," he shouted. "My love is stronger than any fear." The shadows froze, then began to fade. In their place, a glowing crystal appeared, its light filling the cave. With the silver feather, the golden stone, and the glowing crystal, Amani returned to the river. He knelt once more and called to the moon. "Moon," he said, "I have done all that you asked. I have climbed the mountain, crossed the desert, and faced my fears. Please, grant me your light so I can show my wife how much I love her." The moon shone brighter than ever before. A single beam of light touched the feather, the stone, and the crystal. They merged together, forming a glowing orb. "This is my gift to you," the moon said. "Take it to your wife, and may your love shine as brightly as my light." When Amani returned to the village, he handed the glowing orb to Nya. She gasped, her eyes filling with tears. "Amani," she whispered, "you brought me the moon." From that day on, the glowing orb lit their home. It was a constant reminder of their love, a love so strong that it reached the heavens. The villagers were amazed by the story. They told it to their children and their children's children. And Amani's journey became a legend, a tale of love, courage, and determination. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Folktales of Africa for more magical tales from Africa. Thank you for watching.